Hey, pretty girls! Thank you guys so much for tuning in for season 1, episode 4 of the Pretty Girl Be Healed podcast. We're so grateful that you've decided to join us tonight.
Yes, today we are talking about unboxing ourselves and the road to authenticity. No, I can't even talk today. Authenticity. Yes. And you know what? I was about to say transparency, but I think both of them go hand in hand. But today we're talking about authentic. We're talking about being authentic and what that looks like, and what our journey from being really inauthentic to authentic. Oh my God.
Authentic.
Yes. There you go. There you go, pretty girl. Help me out. Help me out today, Lord. Yes. What that journey looks like. So,
yes.
The first thing I wanted to start with is, interestingly enough, or intentionally enough, after our last episodes, the father, he immediately gave me some feedback. And his feedback was, I want y'all to dig a little deeper. He said you are being too safe. And if you go a little deeper, if you share some of the experiences that you had, even if they're painful, even if it's something that, even if you have to walk down that road again, it's something that I need my people to hear. So we are all about digging to the roots. And ultimately, if we don't dig to the root, we can't be free of some of the things that plague us. So today we're going to go a little deeper.
Yeah. I think it's important that, we each have gone through journeys and situations where we were boxed in. The title of the episode tonight is Unbox Me, the journey to your authentic self. And, in some way, shape, or form, either in childhood, in our friendships, at work, or any of those capacities, we have been boxed in. And it has caused us to almost dim our lights on who we really are. So tonight's episode is intended to explore that so that you will be able to identify and to reignite the truest you of your identity. And you can walk into your authentic self no matter who's in the room, what your challenges are, what your obstacles are. You will always show up as you.
Yes, absolutely. So I guess we can just go ahead and get started. So as I was praying to the Lord about what should be discussed on today, he just brought me back to the root. And I think as we have this conversation, we even challenge anyone who is watching our podcast to ask the Lord to go back to when it first started. And for me, when I look back to when it first started, the Lord showed me that it started with rejection. And a lot of times for anyone, when we are looking at inauthenticity, it's because we are trying to conform to somebody else's ideal of what we should be. And as a child, and I'll give the disclaimer that this is nothing against my parents. We'll explore relationships with parents and forgiveness, but that's not for this episode. But my parents did what they were supposed to do. They brought me into this world. So it's nothing against my parents. This is my story. This is my truth. But from the beginning, my father wanted no parts of any children. That was very much aware by everyone. So from the beginning, I didn't have a relationship with my father. And with my mother, it really was just carrying, not only weight from things that she experienced as a child, but, having to mother 2 children. I'm a twin. Having to mother 2 children on her own. So from the early on, I was rejected, right? And when you get to this place of rejection, you get to the point of, well, what do I need to do so that I can be accepted? And that is when people pleasing comes in, and impostering other things come in. And for me, I think that school and being smart was a thing for me. I always was really, really smart at school. It just was something that came easy to me. So when it came to me and pleasing people, oh, well, I'm gonna be smart. I'm gonna be smart, and I'm gonna work as hard as I can to be smart. And that's where it started with me. It's just, it started with my parents. It started with my relationship with my parents, and then it just continued to go from there. So I'll just pass it over to you, fellow pretty girl. Well, where you think it started, when that inauthenticity started?
Yeah, I think for me it was my school journey. My parents did a really good job raising me to be me, especially early on. I don't remember much of my childhood, but the things that I do remember was me being able to do pretty much anything, explore anything, whether it be sports, clubs, all those other things to kind of determine what I wanted. And my parents never really got in the way of it. So even if they didn't necessarily agree with the club or even the decision, they supported it because I was making the decision. But I think the journey for me started in my school years. I am very much a person that is an intellect. So things come to me pretty easy. I never had to study hard. I never had to, do too much. I could literally, sit for the lecture, sit for the class, sit all day in school, learn it, apply it the first time, and didn't really have to study and pass the test. I remember times where my parents thought that I was, not doing my homework and failing because I would come home and, get my homework done and be out in the streets double dutching. And they're like, well, what about your homework? And I'm like, it's done. So I remember my father, get on a tangent, but it'll make sense. My father would say, well, you're grounded until I see your report card. And I thought that was so unfair because I'm like, yo, I did the work.
Yeah.
But I got the report card and it was straight A's, honors roll at that point, what it was called honor roll or president's list. And, so my intellects came natural to me. I'm an avid reader. I don't like TV and all those things. So I was already different from my counterparts. I was already different. And I was also, from a very young age, a very fashionable person. I love pretty girls. I love pink. I love jewelry. I love heels. I like getting dressed up for no reason. And I remember being rejected by my peers because I didn't dress the same way as them. I was a little girl in cute skirts and I love, things like that. And it was just my style. It was things that I loved. And I remember just, people not wanting to talk to me, not wanting to deal with me because I was different. And that journey into high school, it journeyed into friendships, it journeyed into this deep-seated decision of mine to hide the things that I truly love about myself to be accepted by my peers. I've even had, associates or people say to me, do you have to be doing so much?
Right.
Do you have to be so dressed up every time we go out? Right. Well, why come you got dressed up just to sit in my living room or just to sit, and we're not really going nowhere. But it was my innate nature. And I found myself in those situations not getting dressed, not doing my makeup, not getting my nails done, to conform almost because it felt better to just conform and bear it and grin than to be out cute by yourself. Yes. So for me, I think that a lot of me being boxed in came from just a journey of trying to establish friendships with people who did not accept me at my authentic self.
Yes. Yeah, so let me go back and connect a couple dots before I go forward. So I talked about how that inauthenticity started in school, and really what took place is that because I was good at being smart, I shared that with my pretty girl over here. That started to form my identity. I started to operate in a way that's how I perform is me, is who I am. So same thing with my fellow pretty girl over here, straight A's throughout my entire scholastic career. Then when I got to, as an adult, and I started to navigate, being in relationships and having children, it really became everything I viewed was how well I performed. I started to run things as if I was running a business. I used to work for a company where it was very much metrics driven. So if you got this score, then you were excelling at what you were doing. And literally, I started to raise parent my children that way. I started to treat my significant other as a metric. Everything that I framed in my life was a metric. And I remember being at this company, and this was something that I've experienced and throughout my career, is that I start one place and then I power through promotion after promotion and promotion. And I don't say that to be haughty or anything like that. That's just was something that I was strive to do, because I was very results driven. And I remember that I had finally gotten this promotion, and the way it took place was that it's not only did I get the promotion, but I skipped over a whole bunch of other people who had been at the company longer than me. So not only had I got the promotion, but now everybody hate me as well, right?
Yeah, been there.
But then I remember calling someone, and I just felt this emptiness. This something, it literally was in my core. And I remember getting a promotion, but feeling completely purposeless. Like what was the purpose of this? And that was the catalyst for everything in my life as I know it to start to reform, because I really thought of everything as this is performing or it's not performing, and I treated everything across the board as a metric, and you can imagine how that was turning out for me.
Yeah, what's interesting? You just gave me a revelation, or God gave me a revelation through what you said, because part of the boxing in that I experienced was in moments of celebration I couldn't celebrate. And what I mean by that is there was times that were so noteworthy in my life, and times that I wanted to celebrate, but I looked around and had to be very cautious with who I shared information with, even down to my bloodline. I couldn't, shout to the rooftops when I made a promotion. I couldn't, celebrate, those things, because people would either be jealous, they wouldn't be happy for you. I was surrounded by people who just could not clap when it was my turn to win. Though I might have been there for them and other, and this no shade, no tea. I'm speaking how it is, how I started in this box me situation. And I even think now, I'm like, wow, I talked a lot about getting my license last week for my profession. And I think I said on the podcast last week, what's next? And I didn't have an answer. And I even said, like, people were asking, like, how are you going to celebrate? How are you going to celebrate? And I didn't have an answer. And even in this moment, it's triggering me to think, like, you don't have an answer because you had gotten so used to being boxed in, uncelebrated, that I have decided not to celebrate because I know that others around me were not going to equally celebrate. And that's not the case now. I'm surrounded by an army of friends that see me win if I do small things, let alone the really big things. But it just, you saying that triggered me to believe or to think, like, oh, snap. The reason why I don't celebrate, the reason why, I have a hard time celebrating even my most smaller of accomplishments is because I didn't have that friendship. I didn't have those people to kind of power through with me and celebrate with me.
Yeah. That has been my experience as well. When people see you excel, they just think that you're trying to be a know-it-all, or you're trying to outshine other people. And that's the weird part about that. But when I think about anything that I've tried to accomplish, first of all, it's in a lot of ways it was unhealthy. It was really trying to obtain these things just for the sake of saying that I obtained them. But I definitely share that with you, that you have people who look at you and they can't clap for you. But I will say, in my journey towards authenticity, I've learned that the word says that we are not to look into the face of men. And yes, encouragement is good, but I will say that this journey of looking to people for that affirmation and for the confirmation that what I did was good was it was really me needing to not to look to them.
Yeah.
So we can get to the other side of trans of going to authenticity later in our conversation, but I will say that that was something that I learned in this process.
Yeah.
Not to say that some people ain't just haters.
There's some.
But because there are some people who definitely just don't want to see you do well, and there are even some people who are strategically placed in your circle who are sent to plant seeds that you cannot do it.
Yeah.
My can't do it, that you're doing too much, that I remember, this could even be leaders, and it's not any of my leaders currently. I have amazing leaders who pour into me, who are integral, but it could be your leader as well. You know, I've had former leaders who who planted some of the most bad seeds, or tried to plant bad seeds into me as well. So it could come in any form. So when you're thinking about, you know, why you are where you are, and trying to turn away from your inauthentic self, is really even thinking about the seeds that were planted, because the seeds need to be uprooted. All these things need to be uprooted in order for you to pivot to the person that you are truly meant to be.
Yeah, you know, I even want to talk about. I think it's important to talk about, and the Holy Spirit literally just dropped this in my lap. What are the warning signs of inauthenticity? And I think that one of the warning signs of inauthenticity is this internal dislike for yourself, because you're doing things that you really don't want to do, or you're making decisions that you really don't want to make. So publicly, you're making these decisions and you're smiling and you're grinning, when intrinsically or internally you're beating yourself up because it's not really what you want to do, and you're hiding what you want to do. Another red flag of being inauthentic or even being boxed in looks like you putting on a mask, putting on this smile, when really inside you're like, I wish I would have done, I wish I would have said, I wish I would have made the decision. And even another red flag is hiding. You find yourself hiding parts about yourself because you're scared of what someone else is going to say about you. And which you know, over time invokes a sense of fear to be who you really are. So if you find yourself in situations where you're looking in the mirror and you're like, I wish I could, I wish I could. And I've been there, you know, looking in the mirror, looking at myself in tights and a t-shirt, you know, knowing that was never me. It was never something I even desired to wear. Looking at myself in flats when I really want to wear heels, being upset at me, not at what was going on around me, but being upset at me because I was too afraid to show up as me. If you're finding yourself in those spaces where you're masking, you're hiding, you're even avoiding you in the mirror, because you know that if you look back at you, you know that that's not truly you that you're showing to the world. Those are indicators that you are being boxed in. You're either boxing yourself in, you're allowing others to box you in, but you're boxed in who you really are at your core. There's literally a box with barbed wire around it while you show the world the facade that you put on every day for acceptance.
Yeah. And I just wanted to journey through some of the consequences of that. When I think about my marriage, as my sister was talking, I was thinking about how I brought up to my now ex-husband, I said to him before we got married that I wanted to go to marriage counseling, and I wanted to do so with somebody in the church. It was something that was important to me. But again, from a people pleasing perspective, which comes when you are being inauthentic, you want to please those around you. So instead of insisting on us doing that, and even seeing that it was a very huge red flag that he did not want to really have anything to do with the church or anything to do with counseling, we went on and we got married. And I came into covenant with something that honestly, truly was not ordained by God. And, you know, ultimately the consequence of that was divorce. You know, so when you think about the partner that you're going to be coupled with even your church. I did speak about, former leaders who were really implanting bad seeds. And when I look at inauthenticity and the fruits of that, right? Because when we talk about fruits, there could be good fruit or bad fruit. Even if we're talking in plain terms, you might have a tree and there might be some rotten fruit on that tree, right? And when we talk about the bad fruits of inauthenticity, you're people pleasing. As my sister talked about, you have a mask on. You are trying to conform with things that you should not be conforming to, when the word tells us that we need to be set apart. The word tells us that we're called out. We're called out people, a peculiar people, right? So this is the things that I'm supposed to be, but I am fighting to be the same as everybody else. And when I think about even what I came into covenant with when it comes to my religious walk, that is something that you have to be careful about as well. When I started to walk and I really truly wanted to have a relationship with God, because I was already in a mindset of impostoring thing and imitating things that I saw, I looked to my left and my right, and I saw the things that other people were doing, and really it cultivated this inauthentic relationship with God. And when I think about the grand scheme of everything that we're talking about, that to me was the most consequential, is to not truly be in relationship with the Father. I mean, the Father, just having a truly inauthentic relationship where you're performing and you're doing everything that you see those around you do, versus truly having a relationship with Him. And I would say that as I journeyed out of inauthenticity to my authentic self, that was the biggest fruit of that, is my relationship with the Father.
Yeah. Let's walk there for a second, because I think it's important to paint the picture of what this looks like, because now we've painted this image of ourselves. We're boxed in. So now we have presented ourselves to the world as something that we're not.
Yeah.
And then we spend all day with that facade, with this image, with this demeanor, with this character that we have created. When the Bible says, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. But instead we've taken on a different form. We've taken on this form that we have created in this box to be accepted by the society, your friends, the world, whomever. And then we don't take that mask off. We become this. We walk this out. We become this. And what happens is we go to prayer with this facade on.
Yes.
And we're angry.
Yes.
And we're hurt. And it's like,
Jesus.
but God, but God, you said, He's like, but I called you. Right. So it's literally a tug of war in prayer, because here you come with this mask on, telling the Father what's not working and why you're angry and this, that, and the third, when the Father is like, but I don't even know who I'm talking to right now.
Yeah, who are
you? Who Paul, I know, Jesus, I know, but who are you? Because we have put together, we've knitted this sense of identity for ourselves. And the Father is looking at us in prayer like, who is this person? This is not who I called you to be. You are a collection of the things, of the traumas and the triggers and the things that have been said about you. You have cultivated this, these ideas to be who you are. And it goes from, you have it on the facade. The facade turns into rejection. Rejection turns into identity issues. Identity issues turn into imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is prolonged. It turns into a trauma, because now you really don't know who you are, because there have been years and years and years of this false creation that you've cultivated of yourself, when God is like, I need you to start from over here, because here is where I called you. You've created yourself to be over there, and that's not what I have for you. If you would just take off the mask, if you would just come out of hiding, if you would come out of the cave, because I've been in that cave, if you come out of the cave and you show up as you, the you that I created you to be, the you that I have called you before the foundation of the earth to be, everything you're asking me for is in your identity, the identity that I gave you, not the identity that you created. So I think it's important to paint that picture, because while we're talking to this Father, the Father's looking at this image like, who is this? But who this woman? Like, legit, because, we come to God as who we think we should be instead of who He says we are. And I think that that's another indicator, that we, we don't have a choice. Time is not forever. We don't have a choice but to show up as ourselves. And it don't matter what anybody else says. I had to come to that point. There was a time where I wouldn't open my mouth. There was a time that I could not be me because those around me would try to smother the real me for whatever the reason. Yeah. And I had to get to a point where I had to be okay being Kaya, Nakaya, even if I had to walk alone. Yeah. Because I'll be honest, there was a part of me and a season of me that didn't even like my name. Yeah. You know, there was a time in me that didn't like looking in the mirror. There was a time in me where I let others talk me out of who I am. And I find myself by myself with all of these identities of me and don't really know who I am.
Don't know who you are.
Don't know who I am. But when, you know, I had to fight to find my place again and to find who I am. But now that I am who I am, you know, your voice matters. Your voice means something. God didn't just put you on this earth for naught. There is a purpose and there is a plan for you. But you can't show up with a facade on and say that you are who God says you are. Yeah. You know, you cannot continue on in life just, oh, well, such and so I said I couldn't be or I wouldn't be, so I'm not going to be. No, you did not come into this world, you know, with a group of friends. You know, when God called you and he created you, it was a round table discussion with himself, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. There was no other person there that had a say about who you really were. He did not consult anybody else but himself. So he created you with a purpose, which means that it is your mandate if you are God's chosen to walk in your purpose. Yes. So never mind what people have to say. Never mind what the naysayers are saying. You have to adjust your crown, even when it hurts. Because trust me, I've been through seasons in friendships and family ships and all those other ships where it cut me to the core. Yes. But it was all an ordained plan by God, because even in the cutting, even in the bruising, even in the tears, I found me. Yeah. And I can stand on this platform and tell you that I am my most authentic self today, probably more than I have ever been, because of those experiences. Yeah. So understand that you need to be you, even if you have to walk alone. Understanding that walking alone is only but for a season, because there are people that are waiting for you to show up as you so they can join you. Yes. They can join you. Yes. You know, so I think it's important not only to understand the red flags, but understand that what happens, you know, once you've identified those red flags and the journey of really becoming you. Because here's the reality. There's no one else like you. Yeah. There's nobody else that can do what you do. So why not show up as your own blueprint? Yes. There is nobody else that can carbon copy you, even if they try, because God called you to be the original.
Yes, absolutely. I think about, you know, again, just going back to my early word walk and I wanted to please God so much. And even for the one out there who is really doing the things that they think they should be doing and checking the box off of what they should think they should be doing as a Christian. I remember, you know, the clothes I wore and the way I acted, and it felt like I had a costume on, you know, and the word says that we are to worship the Father in spirit and in truth. And we can't do that. We can't come to him in prayer. We can't come to him in worship if we are in a costume. Yeah. You were literally bound coming to the Father. I remember just last year, I was so bent on performing, so bent on having a successful relationship with the Father, right? Sounds ludicrous, that I didn't think I was able to be angry. I remember that I started to feel depressed. I started to deal with anxiety, and really inside I was ready to spontaneously combust because I was not able to release this anger. And I wasn't able to release this anger because it did not fit into the molds of the identity that I had created for myself. And my pretty girl over here touched on this, that sometimes the identity that you create for yourself, the inauthentic version of yourself, is so fabricated that you don't even know where the real you begin and the real you ends. Yeah. So I would challenge anyone who was watching this to ask the Lord, did you just want to be your authentic self, for the Father to reveal to you any inauthentic portions in your life, whether it be friends, whether it be thoughts, whether it be dreams. I remember when I think back of how the enemy attacked me, dreams that wasn't even in my dreams. And I was like, wait a minute, this is not something that I want to do. And when we're talking about it needing to be you, and it needed to be your voice, I remember being ridiculed about the way I pray, being ridiculed about my tongue. So then, of course, me wanting to fit in and conform myself to everyone else, then I started to look to others to how they prayed. But no, the Lord needs to hear your sound, your voice, and the way that the frequency of your voice. We really don't realize how it has to be you. It cannot be anyone else. And that is why the enemy has attacked our identity from the very beginning. This is not something that's new. The enemy has always tried to attack our identity. So ask the Lord, reveal to me. If there's any inauthentic portions in my life, reveal it to me now, Lord, and show me how to get to my authentic self, because we are to align to the identity that Christ has for us, not anyone else.
Yeah, you know what I find interesting is, it kind of brings us to our next point. Inauthenticity, and you hit it so eloquently on the nose, that inauthenticity breeds depression. It breeds anxiety. It breeds some mental health concerns. You could find yourself almost schizophrenic and, in the natural and in the spirit, because you're trying to determine, while you're trying to box yourself in, the real you is pushing, trying to push through. Somebody's and you're depressed. Right. And you're depressed because you're scared. And because you're scared and there's a level of fear, as that intensifies and it heightens, it breeds anxiety. Now you're panicking. Now you're, you see how it just catapults into one thing and it mutates from one thing to another, because inauthenticity breeds unhappiness. It breeds anger. It breeds despair. It breeds hopelessness. And long term, these are some of the reasons why traumas exist, because we have such a difficult time just showing up as us, and irregardless of who accepts us or who doesn't. So even to the point of just the indicators of being boxed in or being inauthentic, just understanding that, if you're wrestling with the anger, if you're wrestling with the hopelessness, if you're wrestling with depressed, to really examine the root. I know the root of my depression was that I couldn't show up as me. I was scared to put jewelry on at some points in life. And, I was scared to be this fashionable plus size woman, because there was some that had a problem with that. I was afraid to show up in my professional world. I developed imposter syndrome, forever second guessing everything that I did, almost being double-minded, because I knew that I could do it, but I was so afraid of what would happen if I did do it. What would happen if I did show up? Who would have something to say? In ministry, I was constantly feared of being weighed in the spirit. That burns me up. You ever want to see me be burnt up? Try to weigh me in the spirit, because you think you're one thing and I'm down here, or you put yourself on this pedestal and I'm down. That ruffles my gears, because who told you that you were God?
Yes.
Who told you that? Because I don't think he sits high and looks low. He ain't at our vantage point.
Right.
So, those things, stop me from being who I was and who I am. I was sleeping on myself because of what somebody else had to say. And I think that kind of just brings us into our next point is, now that we've talked about ways that we were boxed, now that we identify the red flags of being unboxed, or what it looks like to be unboxed, or telltale signs of being boxed and inauthentic. How do we journey to unbox me? How do we journey to being our authentic selves? What will we tell our fellow pretty girls if there was anything that they needed to know in their journey of authenticity? What would it be?
So I think it really would be sitting at the Father's feet and sitting in his presence. And for some people, even when I started my journey, I'm like, what does that mean? What does it mean to sit in the Father's presence? It is something that is very innate now, but it was a foreign concept to me before. Really, it could just be sitting and clearing out your mind and listening to some worship music. It could be sitting and literally pouring out everything. I'm talking about, because the Father, he know you. He know your beginning, he know your end, he knows you before you were formed. So there's nothing that you could tell him that he doesn't know and that you need to be embarrassed about. It could be sitting there and pouring out to him. It could be journaling. Some people, are not, vocal, journeying it down. It could be a voice note. It could be all of these things where you sit there and literally give these things to God. The other aspect of that is get into your word. You can't know who you are if you don't know. Yeah, until you know who you are. The word says that we should. I'm not going to say that scripture, but the word will tell you. The word will tell you who you are. Your identity. The key to your identity is in the Bible. It's so important to know the word, because if you know the word, you will know we are to emulate Christ. And if you don't know Christ, then who would you know to emulate? Yeah. And then when it comes to people who come along and try to feed lies, right? People who are workers of the enemy who try to plant things into you. If you know your word, you're going to say no to thyself. You're going to say, get behind thee, Satan, because you know that is not the truth. So it's so important to get in his presence and to get in your word.
Yeah.
And then I would say, just to go through the process.
Yeah.
Nakaya touched on that your circle was going to change. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's painful. Sometimes it's super, super painful for God when he reveals to you that the people who you thought were for you are not for you. And some of that time you already knew it wasn't for you. Mm-hmm. You already knew it wasn't for you, but you were just so comfortable in some form of acceptance.
Yeah, desire and companionship.
Yeah, that you just stayed there. But God wants greater for us. He says abundantly. And us conforming to something that's not even a fraction of what God has for us ain't it. Yeah. So you will see your circle change. You might even be in a period of isolation where the Lord literally just wants to have one-on-one conversations with you. And that is okay. Let me tell you, it was one of the most difficult, uncomfortable spaces that I experienced in my life. But when I tell you the fruit on the other side of that, I cannot describe to you. And that's not to say that I have arrived in any way, shape, or form. There are several things that the Lord is still working through when it comes to Kawana. But let me tell you, go through the process. Yeah. Go through the process because you want to show up as you, because it's important. That just like Nakaya just spoke about, there are people that you are assigned to, not anyone else but you, that literally, if you don't stand up and do what you are called to do, they won't stand up either. Yeah. And that's important.
I think there are 3 things that I would advise in the journey to your own identity and authenticity. And along with what you said, I think it's equally important to grieve. Mm-hmm. And when I say grieve the time wasted, because it was wasted time. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest. I would grieve the wasted time. I would grieve having to take off the mask, because the mask is comfortable. Mm-hmm. The mask is easy. Mm-hmm. Though it's not you, the mask is easy to put on. Mm-hmm. So I would grieve taking the mask off. I would grieve the relationships. Mm-hmm. I would grieve the wasted time. I would spend time grieving even what was said about me that hurt me. I had to do that big time. I had to get it out so that I never had to think about it again. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to grieve. It's equally as important to forgive yourself. Mm-hmm. Because even though we have grown comfortable in the facade, we knew it was wrong, but we were boxed in. It's almost the equivalent of having your back up against the wall and not having a way to fight out of that. So, forgive yourself for just being boxed in and not being yourself. And I think that another tool is, once you're out of it, once you've prayed your way out, once you've cried your way out, once you've screamed your way out, once you've journaled your way out, once you've counseled your way out, you went to therapy for your way out, whatever your way out looks like, don't ever come into agreement with something that somebody else has to say about you ever. Make it your business. Not that you'll be cold-hearted towards people, because people are going to offer advice when you ain't asked for it.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that you have to come into agreement with that thing. Because if it's not the voice of the Lord, you better check it at the roots and check the intention of what that person is saying to you. So never allow yourself to dim your light to come into agreement with something that somebody else says. Another nugget is to come out from among them.
Yes.
Kawana talked about isolation. And we often think of isolation as a curse word when it really can save you from heartache, further hurt, further pain, if you would just get to yourself and begin to know yourself. Sometimes, you know what that looked like for me? It looked like taking the hottest shower that I could stand and, spending the self-care time to lather up my body and love on my body so I wouldn't hate it anymore. It looked like taking that extra few minutes to put the makeup on and put on my favorite fragrance, because it wasn't for nobody else. I was trying to uplift my spirits. It looked like, having moments of crying in private to get myself together so I could show up as me in public. It looked like being honest with God that I really didn't like myself, but because you've called me to be this person, I'm going to be the best Nakaya there is, because there was only one me. So it took a level of honesty. It took uncertainty. It took uncertainty within me for me to be me. I was uncertain how people were going to respond to the real Nakaya really standing up. But it didn't matter. I got to a point where the naysayers, even the things the enemy tried to plant innately in me, I could rebuke that and still show up as me, standing tall and in my own shoes, and finally being comfortable, because I journeyed through that process. And your process may not be my process. Your journey and experience may not be my journey and experience, but you have one. So it's important to walk it out and don't rush it. Don't rush it. Becoming you is a daily decision, and it's a lifelong occurring thing. It's not something that you're just going to arrive in one day, because we're always changing. We're constantly growing and developing. So it's a process, but enjoy the process. Enjoy the process, because there's only one you. And wait till you found you, and you can take the box off. You can take the chains off. You can unyoke yourself from what society or the world says you are, and truly become you. Baby, is comfortable. You can sit back and be like, oh, here I is. Here I am. Like, and not boastfully or pridefully, but there is a level of proud.
Godfidence.
A Godfidence. Yes. There's a level of Godfidence that I have that I didn't have before. That I can walk in a room as me. If you like it or not, and still be me with all that God has given me, with all that God has trusted me with, and walk out equally as Godfident. There is a level of esteem that I didn't once have. That I'm like, girl, now, I can laugh and smile and be me, and not have to worry about taking a mask off when I get home, because this is me. Flaws and all. I ain't perfect. I got, God is still working with me through a whole lot of things. But flaws and all, it's a joy to be Nakaya. It's a joy to be the Kawana. It's a joy to be a pretty girl, but you, not nobody else's pretty girl, you pretty girl. It's a joy to be you. And don't let anybody else tell you anything different.
Yes. So I want to talk to all the singles out there, because my sister talked about isolation. And a lot of times we think of singleness as being isolated. And as I've been journeying to my authentic self, I wouldn't say, I'm not going to use the word isolation, but a lot of people see singleness as isolation. And Nakaya talk about being brokenhearted. If anything, when you were in this journey of becoming your authentic self, who God has called you to be, and you were looking for a spouse, it is one of the best things that you can ever experience. As God has built me up in this space, can anybody just come up in here and be talking about I'm your husband?
Nah, bro.
Even,
who sent you?
Even I want to date you, and Nakaya could attest to this, because she knows. Listen, because I'm like, nope. God ain't sent you. She be like, come on, nope, that ain't him. But when you are in this space of, especially, inauthenticity, we didn't talk about insecurity. Insecurity is one of those bad fruits that come along with being inauthentic. You're insecure, so now you just stand for anything.
Yeah.
You just an open door. You just happy for anything to give you attention. And I love this period of this one-on-one time with the Lord, because it's like when you know how much the Lord loves you, and when you know what the word says about you, you're not just gonna let anybody else gonna come in. So for all my singles out there, I just want to encourage you to go through the process, to allow God to build you up, to allow God to get you to that point of confidence. That you're pretty. That when somebody walk down the street and say, "Hey, pretty girl," and they really just want some nefarious, they have some nefarious intentions for you, that you already know you're pretty.
Yeah.
So you're not swept up in these things that they're trying to say, but that you are looking beyond it. The one thing that I don't think we talked about was discernment. And it's not necessarily that you don't have discernment when you are being inauthentic, but I will say that you definitely listen to your discernment when you are in your authentic self. And I would say that, just to continue to pray for a heightened level of discernment, because when it comes to people who are trying to even plant things into you, your discernment will say, "Oh no, I don't receive that." You will see the intentions before they even try to come in. And as we journey to that space, to who we are truly called to be, we're not going to stand for nothing, and we're not just going to allow anybody to pour into us.
Yeah.
So discernment is another thing that I wanted to speak on.
Yeah, I think it's important because you tap dance around it, but I'm a dig. Your discernment is cloudy when you're listening to the voices of others, and you're not tuned into who you really are and who God says you are. It's cloudy. It's not disappearing. I wouldn't say that, but I would say that it was cloudy. So I agree that it's important that in part of the journey, what's good ground and what's bad seeds.
Right.
So what's for you and what's really just meant to try to sidetrack you on other things other than authenticity.
Right.
So I think we stick our pin in the journey. It's going to be a journey, like we said earlier. Part of becoming your truest self is lifelong.
Yes.
It's not just I've arrived. You might have arrived at one level, but my apostle always says it so eloquently: when you've reached the top of one level, it's the bottom of your next level. It's starting over in your next level, or you're at ground one in your next level. I'll say it again: when you've reached level 10 of one realm, you really have reached level 0 of the next realm. And, so, we never arrive. We're never, just 100%. But it's a journey.
Yes.
And I'm so excited. I want to talk to my pretty girls and pretty women out there that are watching this, because it's a journey, but we're journeying with you.
Yeah.
It's a journey. It might be uncertain. You might be unsure, but we're with you. We're standing by you. We're rooting for you. We all ain't haters. We all ain't naysayers, but there is a woman, there is a girl that is rooting for you, either to come out so that they can come out, or they've already come out and they're like, "Come on, girl, you can do it." We're literally rooting for you. We are waiting to give you the applause that you deserve, because you have made the decision to journey as your authentic self.
Yeah.
So we're praying for you. We love you so much. Come out from among them.
Yes.
Be ye separated, and don't entangle with the yoke of bondage. It's time for you to be who you were really called to be.
Yes.
So we want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to episode 4, where we just journeyed through our authentic selves. We dug a little bit. We hope we didn't offend you. We're never meant to offend you, but we mean for you to walk away with a change in perspective and a change in mindset, so that you can come up. It's time to come up and be you. Don't forget, we're streaming live every Friday on Facebook and YouTube at 8 p.m. And for our streamers that are streaming on the go, we're on a plethora of platforms, including Apple Music, Spotify, Google Music, Google Podcasts. We're on them all. So check us out while you're at the gym, on the go, in your car, washing dishes, however you tune in. And don't forget to follow us on our socials right here on Facebook and YouTube, as well as Instagram at prettygirl_BeHill and TikTok, where we post daily encouragement and daily insight and behind the scenes. And that's at prettygirlb. And until next time, stay pretty, and we will see you next week. Bye. Pretty girl.